All right, so as we hit middle adulthood, our relationships with our siblings change, and they really go from being pretty, I don't know, competitive or, I don't know, not really friends and more rivals to really pretty close, good friends. Typically, they become our best friends. They can be apathetic or even still have that rivalry that they had prior, but the majority of adulthood siblings are very close and they tend to really become closer and have a really strong friendship. And in fact, most of us, that's who our friends are and that's who we're spending time with. Another beauty in middle adulthood is typically we're becoming grandparents. And we do see that the longevity of an individual is highly influenced or increases by their grandparenting. Plays a really big role, especially whenever there's some type of crisis in the family, the grandparents can be there. I know last year we had a fire in our house and we didn't have to question. The grandparents happily took us in while we got everything figured out. And it's not always easy, but they're always there for everybody, grandparents typically, and hopefully you're able to be. Most are going to become first-time grandparents in middle age, and grandmothers typically have more contact with the grandchildren than the grandfathers do. It just probably is back to that nurturing side of things. Not that grandfathers are not involved, but typically the grandmothers are a bit more involved. Their roles are really important in that family, again, to help with that crisis, but also you start to see an impact on where they live and the proximity towards where they live, and then also their monetary ability to be involved with different things. So if you live just across the street, obviously you're going to be more involved than if you live across the nation. If you have more money, then you can fly to go see them no matter where you are. You can take them with you. Whereas if you don't have much money, then if you don't live nearby, you can't spend time with them. You can obviously through screen time and all that, but you can't physically get to them as easily as if they lived closer to you. So that can play a big role in a lot of it. Many grandparents are going to help with childcare. Prior to Obamacare, we were able to quit working at any point and kind of retire. And now we have to get insurance. And so most are not able to quit working and to help out until they're 65 or older. But some still are, which is a wonderful aspect. The role of a grandparent is changing a lot too. We are seeing a lot of grandparents raising grandchildren. And while it's wonderful that there's someone there for the grandchildren, for those grandchildren, it can be very difficult for them. None of you are probably preparing to save money for your grandchildren so that one day you might raise them. I know that while we're raising Thaddeus, we are not setting aside extra money for retirement just in case we have his children to raise. But it happens. It can be because of divorce, because of a teen pregnancy, drug use. I mean, it could be death of the parents and you're raising them, but that can be a different profile for a grandparent when they raise their grandchildren. If you're a full-time grandparent, which is again, that grandparent raising the grandchild, you see higher health problems, depression, and stress. So it can be difficult on them. Some of them think it's rewarding and see it as a time to try again, the second chance, but it can be hard on them and difficult for that. But it says adults in middle life play important roles in the lives of the young and the old. It's very important. We're typically, like I said earlier, that sandwich generation. We're taking care of our own children while we're taking care of aging parents, which can be very difficult and very stressful because you've got all these things. I know right now I'm taking care of somebody elderly and my son, and if I'm not at his thing, then I'm at their thing, and it's exhausting. And the other day I couldn't figure out why I was so exhausted, and then I realized, oh, it's because I haven't sat down and not done anything, just nothing, in 3 or 4 weeks, and it's exhausting. So they also kind of view that as a pivot generation because you're having to do all these other things. Women are typically closer in their family bonds than males are. It's just typically what we're seeing with women in general, that nurturing, you see that side. It's not saying that one is better than the other. It's not saying that you have that males aren't close to their families, but you do see it more within that, the female side of that relationship. I'd like to transition into chapter 15, where we're looking at the physical and cognitive development of late adulthood. When we look at late adulthood, we're looking at ages 65 and older. So we're going to look at longevity and lifespan. Typically, the maximum years that people are living are going to be 120 to 125. Life expectancy is the number of years that the average person is living. We're seeing a rise in it. It used to be 72 years. Now we're seeing 78.6 years. So that's really good. We have advances in medicine, nutrition, exercise. Our lifestyles can be better. And then we've reduced infant deaths. And so people are able to live a lot longer. We are seeing some of the lowest life expectancy. We're going to be 50 years to 51. And the highest would be 89.4, kind of in other countries that we're looking at there. Again, that maximum would be that 120 to 125. So in the U.S., the child and maternity rates, mortality rates are really high. Homicide is really high. Our BMI, that body mass index, contributes to that slow increase in life expectancy. America, last I read, was 40% of Americans are obese. And so that can cause a lot of health problems, and life expectancy can be smaller or less than what it would be with a normal BMI. It does vary for different ethnic groups between men and women. So women typically are living longer than men, 81.2 years, and then men is 76.2. And we've talked about this multiple times, but women are more likely to go to the doctor earlier to get something that they think is wrong. Men are more likely to put it off. They can work in harsher conditions, so there may be some difficulties there. Their lifestyle can typically be harder. Their occupation, again, is also harder than females. And so that's some of the reason why women are living longer than men. Latinos, it says that they live 3.3 years longer than non-Latinos because of the connection to the family, and there's lower smoking rates. And that's despite that educational attainment and those income levels. So what we're realizing, and I think you might have seen this in our homework we did, but it talks about how relationships are really important and loneliness kills. So it's one of the big issues that we want to look into, and to realize that even though society is saying that relationships are not important, that, the signs, instead of saying welcome, they're go away. Research shows that that's different, that we need people. We need to be loved, and we need to know that we're important. Centenarians are people who are living to 100 years or older. Supercentenarians are going to live to be 110. So it says in a 2020 list of world's oldest living people, there were no males in the top 50 oldest individuals. It says that for a majority of centenarians, chronic high mortality diseases are markedly delayed for many years. They're still getting some of these things, but later on. And so they just take better care of themselves. Maybe they have good genetics. You see better stress management. Lots of factors are helping people to live until they're 100. Logically, that has an impact on us of how those genes that we get and how they impact us. There's the theory of the cellular clock, where we have a maximum number of times that our cells divide. And when that's over, it's over. And so we've ended because our cellular clock has run out, rather than because of what we're doing to make us age or not age. So lifestyle modifications can delay the telomere shortening that it's talking about over here that happens. So that's one reason why diet and exercise are constantly focused on, because it does help to get the body functioning better and not having these shorter telomeres and all of that. Free radical theory just talks about we have this normal metabolic process that happens, and as we get older, it starts to be damaged and cellular structures are impacted, and so that's making us to age. So they talk about not getting the free radicals, removing them, putting stuff in that fights against it, like blueberries, antioxidants, all of that. So there's lots of different theories that we have over why one is aging. And reality is we don't really know why we're aging. Another one is the body's hormonal system can lower resistance to stress and increase the likelihood of disease. And so maybe there's some stress buffering strategies that we need to do so that we don't age as quickly and can become a centenarian. As we do age, the brain starts to slow and it does shrink. We see about 5 to 10% of its weight between the ages of 20 and 90. So there's lots of shrinkage in those neurons. Those synapses are not firing like they once were. And so we're not able to reach the dendrites and the axons that they're going from one branch to the other. They're not really there or as close. They're there, but they're not as close. So it can be hard to get that movement across to get things, messages across. So other areas that are shrinking, the prefrontal cortex, that decision making, the working memory, our motor behavior becomes slowed and all of that. And then our dopamine levels can be reduced with those neurotransmitters in there, and that can cause problems with your motor movements as well. So there's really lots that's happening in that brain and how it can adapt, but the reality is that if you're not using it, then you're losing it, okay? And so if you look here, over here on this left side, the younger adults, you see a lot firing and happening here, and then even over here some. Older adults, it's different, it's smaller. You see a decrease in this lateralization of what's all going on. So it's very important to manage that brain and to take care of it because it's really impacting us as we're aging. So this is a study over 678 nuns, and it really just shows that if you contribute to that, having an intellectual challenge will contribute to a better quality of life and longevity. And so that's one of the really important things to realize. A lot of times we think like, oh, I'm going to retire and I'm just going to sit and do nothing. When we sit and do nothing, we're not challenging our brain, we'll die. So it's very important to keep that brain challenged and active so that you can live longer. We are aging physically. We have wrinkles, age spots from the sun where we've been out in the sun too long. We become shorter just because of the compression within our vertebrae, on our discs, or even the cartilage is starting to shrink. After age 60, we do start to drop some weight. We'll have muscle loss. It's still very important for you to be exercising. It's going to help you out. It can keep that gait movement inactive, like we've talked about walking. You want healthy hips so that you're not going to fall or have a lot of pain. And you just want to be able to reduce your risk of falling, which happens because we don't have a good range of motion while we're walking, or we can't pick our feet up high enough, and so that can be problematic. They move slower. Older adults move slower than younger adults just because, again, that range of motion, the movement of the brain, all of that can be difficult sending those messages. And then obesity is really hard on that mobility. And so you really want to be healthier and not have a lot of extra weight on you so that those joints are functioning a little bit better, that movement is happening and occurring, and it's not so hard. I mean, it's very difficult and painful to be moving around a lot of stuff, and then that heaviness on those joints can be really hard on them. So we want to take care of ourselves so that we don't risk falling or getting hurt, or even in dying sooner than what we had hoped our lifespan would be. Our vision does change as well. We don't see as well. We don't see color as well as we did. You can have cataracts. That's kind of a thickening of that lens. Glaucoma would be the pressure that's building up and impacting that optic nerve. And then macular degeneration, which that retina is not able to focus. And so there's lots of vision issues that's happening. I know I looked at a meme of a man who couldn't taste what he was eating and he couldn't really see. He thought he was eating yogurt, but he was eating paint. So there's really some sad things that are happening as we're experiencing a decline in our physical development.